there are some good FBI agents out there. I don't want to put down the FBI with a brush. No, there's some real good FBI agents out there. They're very dedicated, and they're loyal Americans. I want to make that very clear. One is Colleen Rowley. She was the FBI Minneapolis legal attorney who attempted to obtain a search warrant on Missouri, who was one of the terrorists, and she was thwarted in her attempts. They refused to give her a search warrant. She claims that she feels that had she obtained this search warrant, she could have developed more information concerning the terrorist attacks. Now, I mentioned there were 30 terrorists. Actually, the other two planes that did not get off the ground, according to Michael, the targets were the Statue of Liberty and the Capitol building. Then we have Keith Williams, FBI agent in Phoenix FBI office, who said that he developed information about the terrorists taking flight trainings, and they weren't interested in landing or taking off, but merely in flying the plane once it was in the air. And then we have an interview by ABC again, and this is an interview by Brian Ross and Vic Walter, December the 19th, 2002. And in this interview, FBI agent Robert Wright, and John Vinson said they were called off criminal investigations of suspected terrorists tied to the deadly bombings of the 2 U.S. embassies in Africa. U.S. officials say Al-Qaeda was responsible for the embassy attacks and the September 11, 2001 attacks in the United States. This is a quote. September the 11th is a direct result of the incompetence of the FBI's International Terrorism Unit. No doubt about that. Absolutely no doubt about that, Wright said. I can't think of the things I know and not go public. Continuing, Wright said that he passed he pressed for information and authorization to open a criminal investigation into the money trail of this group, and his supervisors stopped him. Here's a quote from that interview. The supervisor who was there from headquarters was right straight across from me and started yelling at me, "You will not open criminal investigations. I forbid any of you. You will not open criminal investigations against any of these intelligence subjects," Wright said. Even though they were on a terrorist task force and said they had proof of criminal activity, Wright said he was told not to pursue the matter. I followed up with this matter, and I contacted the assistant U.S. attorney who was working with Mr. Wright and also Mr. Vinson. His name is Mark Flessner, F-L-E-S-S-N-E-R. I gave Mr. Flessner a copy of my 911 report interview with Reconnaissance, and he was also interviewed on this ABC show. Did I say ABC? Yes, ABC show. And he said that here's a quote from him, by the way, on the show. There were powers bigger than I was in the Justice Department and within the FBI that simply were not going to let the building of a criminal case, happen, and it didn't happen, Flessner said. Now, to make things worse, Wright testified that he was floored by Abdul Hafiz's, H-A-F-I-Z-S, refusal, an FBI agent, by the way, who refused to conduct a telephone tap against other Arabs and Muslims, and he was floored by this, and he immediately called FBI headquarters. Their reaction surprised him even more. The supervisor from headquarters says, quote, "Well, you have to understand where he's coming from, Bob." I said, no, I understand where I'm coming from," said Wright. "We both took the same damn oath to defend the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic," and he just said, no way in hell. This is a quote again from him. So what made him really more uneasy was the fact that Abdel, far from being reprimanded, was promoted to one of the FBI's most important anti-terrorist posts, the American Embassy in Saudi Arabia, to handle investigations for the FBI in that Muslim country. So what's happening in America today, folks? Well, let me tell you what I think is happening. The anti-terrorism legislation was initially written under the George Bush Sr. administration in the 1980s. A female Department of Justice attorney made the statement publicly, before this legislation passes, people will have to be killed. Fast forward to February 1993. We have the car bomb, okay? 6 people were killed, right? Not enough. There was $500,000 in damage and 1,000 people injured. However, fast forward to April 1995, Oklahoma City, 168 people, maybe 169 killed. Within a year after that, the anti-terrorism legislation, which was authored under the George Bush Sr. administration, passed. But it wasn't tough enough. So we had to have another terrorist attack, right? September 11, 2001, we had the attack on the World Trade Center. By the way, here's the New York Times article for the car bomb situation that states, by the way, Yosef, the leader of the terrorist group, was CIA trained. And this article states that the FBI knew in advance of the bombing, car bombing of the World Trade Center in February '93, did nothing, actually provided the bomb, the ingredients for the bomb, which was used in connection with that car bombing. So what do we have now? Now we have Homeland Security that takes over all law enforcement, local, state, and federal, in the event of an emergency situation. It has the authority to take over private businesses, child protective services. They want 1 in every 10 Americans to be a snitch or an informant for the government. Children will be trained in terrorism. They already have FEMA camps set up for this. And then they have Operation Garden Plot. That's an article. That's a book that was written in 1993 by the Air Force as to how to handle the civilians who are interned under certain circumstances. And now we're talking about national identification cards. In control of all the money you earn and spend, includes money in the grocery store, of course. Microchips to locate children by satellite. New cars will have tracking devices. And Primakov, a former KGB agent, will be and has been assigned as an advisor to Homeland Security. Don't you find this very interesting? And then we had Patriot Act number 1, and this is H.R. 3261. Under certain circumstances, Americans will not be able to face their peers in a trial. You will not be given an attorney. You can be held without bond. Librarians can be prosecuted if they don't report the issuance of certain books that are lent out to people who are come into the library. Search warrants searches without search warrants. They can jail Americans without trial. They can jail without being charged. Americans can jail without being charged. Recently, there was a rumor that Patriot Act 2 had been written within the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice denied it. However, the act was disseminated secretly. It's an 87-page document. For more information on Patriot Act 2, look up www.publicintegrity.org under What Bush Knew, in quotes. That's www.publicintegrity.org, quote, What Bush Knew. And this is the act, the coup d'etat, really. Because if this act ever passes, anybody who is against the war, you can demonstrate, yes, but you will be arrested. And you will have to be very cautious as to what you say, even on the telephone, because there's no question about it, many of our telephones are tapped, including mine. So, we also have the development. This is in the Las Vegas Review-Journal, February the 13th, 2003. It talks about the total information awareness operation in this country today. And they will be gathering information such as private data on credit card records, bank transactions, car rental receipts, gun purchases, along with the quantities of intelligence information. You have the headlines there. Las Vegas Review-Journal. And here is the article at the bottom of the page. Government plans to identify terrorist suspects. This can be used against you as citizens. And I have here also Las Vegas Review-Journal, May the 10th, 2003, wireless 911 system costly but saves life. They talk here about equipment that can pinpoint the location of a 911 cell phone when somebody dials 911. And they talk about suburban county installed computer software that can tell dispatchers almost exactly where a wireless call originates. They've been able to trace calls from landline phones since the 1980s, but only a few hundred of the nearly 7,000 centers nationwide have the enhanced system that can do the same with wireless units. This is the article. This can be used against you. They say it can be used against terrorists, it can be used against you, and it will be if we don't put a stop to what's going on in America today.